Great. Thank you, Vonnie. It's my pleasure to be with everyone today. Hello, and I'm grateful that Ken Thompson from our team can be with me today. We're looking forward to diving into today's subject and want to give a little bit of setup before we dive in too deeply. But as Vonnie said in the introduction, we appreciate it when questions come through as we go through our discussion. We will try to weave those questions in as we go, and it really helps make the dialogue go a little bit better and be a little bit more relevant for everyone listening in. Now, to kind of introduce who Ken and I are, we lead out our firm, AlignOrg Solutions, and we really specialize in helping organizations clarify their strategic positioning, assessing their organization's capability to be able to deliver on that strategy, design and align their organization, and then facilitate the implementation and change that goes along with any sort of organizational transformation. And the other part of what we do, in addition to the large part of the projects and engagements that we do with our clients, is we do capability building. And we love to do that capability building because it's not only fun and engaging for Ken and I and members of our team to pass along insights, tools, and methods that we find to be high leverage and very impactful for the organizations that we partner with. But we also find that it's a great way for organizations to increase their capacity and really improve, in essence, their ability to leverage positive improvement. And so that's really how we spend our time day in and day out. We consider ourselves at the core to be organization designers, organization aligners. And in the course of our work, we come across a lot of different organizations. Some of these we read about. Some of these we actually get the chance to work with. Some of them we bump into at various conferences and industry events. But nonetheless, we find that there are great learnings and practices going on in lots of different types of organizations, sometimes in high tech, sometimes in consumer products, sometimes in financial services, sometimes in media, sometimes in manufacturing. So there's great practices that we can learn and adopt. And Ken and I like to tell stories, so we'll do our best today to tell a few stories as we get into our dialogue and into our discussion. Now, just in terms of Ken and I, we kind of come from slightly different angles. I've been doing organization design for a good portion of my career, and one of the things that I find interesting is that for a lot of the folks I've interacted with, organization design tends to be an end in and of itself. It's clearly a high leverage activity for an organization, but it often is just sort of like one of the things on the checklist of many things that an organization needs to do. And when Ken started to partner with me a few years ago, he started to really refocus and bring back to the center this key idea that organization design is an activity meant to drive strategy and differentiation. And I'm going to let Ken just say a word or two here as to why he sees that as being so crucial. But he used to sit in the chief executive officer shoes of an organization, and probably has a pretty clear picture on why these two activities, organization design and strategy, are so closely connected. Ken, do you want to just quickly introduce yourself and comment on that?
You bet. First of all, everybody, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here and share a few thoughts with you all today. And thank you, Reed, for the introduction. I have had the opportunity to lead a few large organizations, both in the president and CEO role. And in the process of doing so, I've had a lot of discussions over the years about strategy and what exactly is strategy, what is the difference between strategy, mission, vision, goals, where do numbers come into play, and amongst all of that, what exactly is the role of organization design? And we're going to share a lot more details about that and the role of that here throughout our presentation. But what we have come to learn and come to realize is organization design is actually the process that helps you effectuate your strategy. But the key to that is you actually have to have a strategy that is defined the right way so that you can actually have an actionable strategy to build something around. And so many times, as Reed and I and many of our consultants go into an organization, we have lots of stories where I say, hey, Ken, we already have our strategy. We don't need much help there. Just come in and help us build an organization to effectuate this strategy. And as we go there, sometimes that is truly the case, and we begin the process of a design that will truly do that. But more times than not, I find that the actual strategy, as we were told going in, that is defined, really isn't defined the way that it needs to be defined, or doesn't always have the right components to truly be actionable and have the right substance to build an organization around. And so, later on today, I think we'll talk a little bit more about what that means and what are some of those key components.
Thanks, Ken. So as you can see, in today's objectives, there's a couple of ideas that we'd like to try to touch on. And so we'll move pretty quickly. The first one really deals with this notion of strategy that Ken and I have just kind of teed up, and how organization design and strategy achievement are closely connected with one another. We also want to spend a minute and talk about the different levels of organization design. We want to talk about the organization design process, and if by following the right process, you get deeper, more lasting change rather than just more superficial or mechanical kinds of adjustments. And then lastly, we want to talk about how executives can really be in a position to lead their organization down the path of alignment, not just through an event kind of mentality, but much more through an approach to the way people think and building that into the normal operating rhythm of the organization. So with that as our roadmap, Ken and I wanted to start with a little bit of a discussion on strategy and differentiation. These are two pictures. The resolution may not be fantastic, but you can probably tell that they appear to be offering more or less the same thing. And this was personal for me. I was driving down a busy street in some sort of town that I was visiting that was clearly for vacation. And on one corner of a strip mall was the store that had everything for $1.99 or less. And on the other end of the same strip mall, at the other corner, was this other store that said everything for $9.98 or less. And knowing what I know about strategy, I said to myself, why would someone choose one end of the strip mall versus the other end of the strip mall? There's no differentiation here. They're offering more or less exactly the same things. And maybe one is trying to claim that they're the lowest price in town. But clearly, if I walked, about 50 yards, I'd be able to get something only 1 cent more. And I would still be probably getting the exact same thing. So it begs this question of, if every organization is only trying to differentiate on very superficial items such as the price, there's not much opportunity here. And I'm going to hand it kind of to Ken, because he really is the strategist, to kind of talk a little bit about this dynamic where organizations have a real opportunity to effectuate significant and meaningful strategic change. But it really comes down to understanding what it is and what it's all about.
Yeah, thank you. This is such a great example. So what I'd like to do is just spend a few moments and talk about a couple components of what we feel is a good starting point for a strategy. And there's two main components here. And the first one is what we call operational effectiveness. This is the running the business side. And more times than not, this is part of the component of strategy that I see virtually in every company that I go into, usually has this part embedded into their strategy. In fact, more often than not, I see too much of this, or I see exclusively just this part of the strategy. And what part this means is this is the operational side. This is getting leaner, more efficient, trying to reduce cost down. It's Kaizen, Six Sigma, Lean, Muda measures. It's all of that stuff. It's just trying to fix supply chain, anything associated with driving operational efficiency. Usually, if you see, hey, my strategy is to hit certain numbers or things like that, that can also be associated with operational effectiveness measures. You can go back a few decades if an operational effectiveness strategy was your exclusive strategy, that may have been that may have been good enough, a couple of decades ago. But in today's market, that is not enough to be sustainable in the marketplace. The data is out there. Consumers are wise. They're very savvy. There needs to be something more than just this. If this is your only play in the market, then we know that that's eventually going to lead to competitive convergence. And so what we need to do is we need to look down there at the bottom part of the slide and say, okay, well, certainly we need to have an element of operational effectiveness. If we discount that or don't put that into our strategy, we will also be lacking. But the more important piece is differentiated positioning or differentiation by design. And what that means is we need to deliberately design in to our strategy is how are we going to be different? Why are customers going to choose us? What are we going to offer that is unique, that is different, and how are we going to offer it in a way that sets ourselves apart from our competition? And this is usually done not just by any one thing, it's usually done by a blend of capabilities, by a blend of activities, by a blend of offerings that are enhanced by a set of enabling activities that the organization does to make them happen.